Doctors fear that the immune system will be permanently damaged. The incidence of cancer with adults is on the increase.
In hundreds of jars, the body odor of dissidents was preserved and recorded. They took samples of everybody who had ever aroused their suspicion.
Pretty functional item, especially popular with the Soviet Union. They bought very functional designs.
Imagine waking up one morning to find your neighborhood sliced in half by an impassable barrier. Suddenly and inexplicably, you're separated from those on the other side. Lifelong friends, perhaps, even family members. The barrier cuts through the backyards of people you know, dividing buildings in half. It even prevents you from rowing across a nearby lake where you once played as a child. Such a barrier divided Germany for the past 3 decades, and only recently has this wall come crashing down. Today, we'll journey to Germany and watch the healing process as East Germans learn shocking things about their lives behind the wall, from unbelievable revelations about the feared East German secret police, the Stasi, to shocking truths about environmental neglect, and humorous insights into an East German lingerie company struggling to compete with the West. Join us for Germany Reunited on this episode of Eastern Europe, Breaking with the Past.
We'll be right back with Eastern Europe, Breaking with the Past. And now, Germany's struggle toward freedom.
These are images that speak 1,000 words, images watched by millions of people worldwide. Images that speak eloquently of the struggle against totalitarianism, of a courageous people who broke with their past. When East German cranes swung the concrete sections of the Berlin Wall away on November 9, 1989, they carried away nearly 3 decades of enforced physical isolation and the most tangible symbol of the Cold War. The following film, an excerpt from the series The Other Europe, takes us back to 1961, when the wall was first erected, and narrator Jacques Rupnik explores other artifices created by the East German government to give the illusion of normalcy to its citizens. And now, The Other Europe.
And this is how the East Germans justified separating one German from another.
Den friedlichen Westberlinern stehen die Tore unserer Hauptstadt offen. Geschlossen sind und bleiben sie nur für Burschen wie diese, für Raudis und Agenten, für die ganze Meute der Menschenhändler. Die Zeit der Geduld ist vorbei. Allen Provokateuren wurde demonstriert, dass die Arbeiterklasse nicht mehr wehrlos ist, dass sie, wenn es notwendig ist, pädagogische Lektionen mit der Waffe in der Hand erteilt.
But the wall was not built to keep West Germans out, but to keep East Germans in. Between 1949 and 1961, 1 in 6 left for the West.
A situation had developed where our enemies tried to bleed us to death. And in this situation, we thought the matter over, whether to surrender or whether to stand our ground. And we decided to stand our ground, and so we built this, I would perhaps like to use a different term. We built this barricade, this enduring barricade.
Since the Berlin Wall was built, 77 people are known to have been shot dead by the East German border guards.
Dass ein gutes Deutschland blühe, wie ein anderes gutes Land, heißt es in einem Brechtschen Kindergedicht. Und für dieses gute Deutschland ist in den letzten Tagen viel getan worden.
Schließt die Reihen Genossen, am Brenn stehen wir in Berlin. für Freundschaft, Frieden, Sozialismus in unserer schönen Stadt Berlin. Für Freundschaft, Frieden, Sozialismus in unserer schönen Stadt Berlin.
Building the wall was meant to insulate East German socialism. But it is hard to maintain ideological control when most people can watch West German television. East and West German television are engaged in a somewhat unequal competition for viewers. Once a week on East German television, this man aims to counteract the influence of West German news.
As long as the Federal Republic's television reaches 95 or 96% of the territory of the German Democratic Republic, exactly for this reason, a polemical counter-propaganda program, like the Schwarze Kanal, is a necessity, because these two states have different and incompatible economic and social systems, fire and water.
The less real participation people have in running their society, the more the regime substitutes spectacles of participation.
Now, the festival is glad to welcome the new Family Exercise Association.
Their favorite sports are festivals like this, collective displays of togetherness. The enthusiastic citizen with the socialist state.
The festival beacon burns bright through the night. The adventures it brought us have set us alight, with a flame that inspires us to deeds that elate for the country we love, for our socialist state.
Jugendweihe is the communist equivalent of the Christian confirmation. 14-year-old children take their oath of loyalty to the socialist state.
Weihe der Jugend, das ist ein alter und schöner Brauch der politisch organisierten Arbeiterklasse. Das ist ein Augenblick des Frühlings, der einen neuen Abschnitt im Leben unserer jungen Menschen symbolisiert. Wir, die arbeitenden Menschen unseres Landes, wollen, dass ihr als treue Töchter und Söhne des sozialistischen Vaterlandes, als bewusste Bürger unserer deutschen demokratischen Republik immer und überall für das Wahre und Schöne, für das Gerechteste auf der Welt, für den Sozialismus und den Kommunismus, für den Frieden eintretet, lebt und arbeitet. Seid ihr bereit, als junge Bürger unserer deutschen demokratischen Republik mit uns gemeinsam, getreu der Verfassung, für die große und edle Sache des Sozialismus zu arbeiten und zu kämpfen und das revolutionäre Erbe des Volkes in Ehren zu halten? Ja, das tun wir. Seid ihr bereit, als wahre Patrioten die feste Freundschaft mit der Sowjetunion weiter zu vertiefen, den Bruderbund mit den sozialistischen Ländern zu stärken, im Geiste des proletarischen Internationalismus zu kämpfen, den Frieden zu schätzen und den Sozialismus gegen jeden imperialistischen Angriff zu verteidigen? Ja, das tun wir.
Michaela, herzlichen Glückwunsch. Und für die Zukunft alles Gute, dass deine beruflichen Wünsche auch in Erfüllung gehen. Danke. Dankeschön. Alles Gute für dich. Dankeschön.
Schauen, ja. Von normalen Farbe, Moment.
Ja, es gibt Militarisierung.
Yes, there is militarization. The GDR has a standing army. They attach great importance to a centralized outlook, organizing things from top to bottom.
Befehl spielt eine große Rolle, Unter- und Überordnung.
Orders play a big role, ideas of subordination and superiority. And the concrete examples of this are best found in the way schools are being run and what is happening in kindergarten.
This is educational television in a country which has claimed to break away from the German military tradition. Soldiers act as teachers. This is lesson 1 in military strategy.
Dass es ganz normal ist, in den Schulbüchern Bilder über Panzer und
It's quite normal to find pictures of tanks and guns and soldiers in school books, even in the music textbook. Wherever you look, it's always there. Homework will be set, for example, where the question is, if this tank has a firing range of 30 meters and the other one 50 meters, how much is that altogether?
Dass also die Kinder eigentlich immer wieder damit konfrontiert werden.
So children are in fact always being confronted with it. It continues all through school. You'll be taken with the pioneers to visit barracks, and the knowledge you acquired in kindergarten is consolidated.
Und Schuss.
The most important thing is that we've eliminated the economic foundations of fascism, because these are, of course, monopoly capital. Fascism is the highest form of imperialism, and imperialism is the highest form of capitalism. We've abolished it here completely.
One of the most alarming totalitarian creations was the East German Ministry for State Security, or Stasi for short, probably the most sophisticated and extensive espionage organization ever created. Recent investigations have revealed that the Stasi kept extensive files on more than 5 million East German citizens. That's about 1/3 of the entire population. Information recorded ranged from library books checked out to sexual activities. Only recently have the proportions of the Stasi empire been understood. About 1 in every 7 citizens was an informer. The sole job of 6,000 Stasi operatives was to listen to private phone conversations. In fact, so obsessive were the Stasi in their attempts to root out even the slightest dissidents that they kept an extensive archive of body odors. If, for example, someone hung up a leaflet, specially trained dogs could help the Stasi identify the culprit by the smell left on the paper. Our following film explores this bizarre feature of the Stasi mentality. And while the film may at first appear amusing, it's frightening to realize to what lengths the East German secret police went to maintain control in a totalitarian society. Here's an excerpt from the Der Spiegel program, The Four-Legged versus the Two-Legged.
My breed is the German Shepherd. So far, I've only trained shepherds. You ask me why? Because they are very loyal. Sure. Every other breed is too, but this is one of the oldest breeds. Everyone has had one special dog with which he enjoyed some success, and for me, that was my female shepherd. And that's reason enough. You just don't turn away from a good breed. Somebody else might have been happy with the giant Schnauzer, and he may love them more than anything. But the important thing is that you are not forced to love a dog. Love for the animal must simply be there, and the breed must more or less live up to your expectations. Then it's all the same.
Once he has the scent, he can't be held back. This specialist dog from the special school of the Ministry of the Interior in Preetsch on the Elbe between Wittenberg and Torgau. It is a routine exercise for the trainers in the open. They are practicing how to detect and catch armed escapees. In this case, the scenario has a Soviet deserter hiding in the woods. The dogs are turned loose on him. The scenario became reality about 6 times a year. Biting commandos supported by snooper commandos. The GDR achieved great things with dog training.
It does not matter if the dog bites a certain part of the body. It is important that the pursued person is prevented from shooting. Therefore, the dog has to bite wherever biting opportunities present themselves.
The fighting dogs were the last reserve of the Socialist Party in its battle against the opposition. They were not deployed in October of 1989, but in the forefront of police action, official or secret, against a constantly growing opposition to the regime, the four-legged snoopers were faithful servants of their state.
The Court of Berlin, Prenzlauer Berg. The accused Susanne Böden is charged with public contempt of the state.
Original records of the court proceedings against 21-year-old Susanne Böden, who, together with her 12-year-old sister, had glued 3 handbills against the governing old guard in the GDR on private entrance doors. This is an example of a court case brought on by evidence gathered by the snooper hounds. It is but one of many such cases in the GDR. On the morning of October 7, 1989, Susanne Böden had been caught red-handed and was arrested. She and her sister Marianne had just started to paste handwritten leaflets with the text, "Protest against the old guard." At the People's Police Precinct, Prenzlauer Berg, the 2 girls were questioned for hours on end and charged with public contempt of the state. But that was not all.
First height, eye color, and all those things. Then they asked me what kind of deodorant I was using. All of a sudden he brought in a jar with a rag in it and told me to do it myself. He said what I had to do. I had to unscrew the lid, take out the rag, and then press it against my groins. Either naked or over my underclothes, I can't remember exactly. I had to leave it there for a while, then eventually I had to take it off and then put it back into the jar. He warned me not to let the rag touch anything else. It was clear to me by now what that was supposed to be, namely a sample of my specific body odor. I addressed him on this point and said, "Is this something for the dogs?" And he confirmed that it was intended for the track hounds.
There was a method to this madness. The local branch of the state security Leipzig, for example, prepared a secret year plan for the battle against political opposition. Among the actions deemed absolutely necessary for 1989 was the overview of the odor samples already collected and plans for the ongoing acquisition of further samples. Responsible for the acquisition and evaluation of odor samples was Section 2 of the Stasi, or State Security Main Branch 20. Here is a branch of that section on the outskirts of Leipzig. After the dissolution of the Stasi in December of 1989, only the snooper dogs remained. The former Stasi dog trainer is still coming in daily in order to take care of the former four-legged comrades. The snoopers on duty had tasks that were not immediately recognized by the committee in charge of the dissolution of the Stasi.
I was present when we closed the local branch of Leipzig City. We immediately noticed all these little jars standing around in many rooms. We were astonished and initially even amused because we had no idea what was actually going on here. Later it became clear to us that these jars contained odor samples which were scattered around in the rooms of various employees. These samples were later taken over by the police.
The search for leads. They say that the odor samples were taken to the headquarters of the People's Police Dog Squad in Leipzig. There, the criminal police keeps its own odor archives for police purposes. First visit of the Citizens Committee. After much ado, they are led into a room in which the legacy of the notorious Stasi is resting on shelves. Their hermetically sealed jars are empty by now. Stasi odor samples have gone out of fashion.
I can't believe it. This is from a former colleague of mine who escaped in 1988 across the Baltic Sea. He had in Leipzig an alternative art gallery which displayed pacifist slogans.
In hundreds of jars, the body odor of dissidents was preserved and recorded. They took samples of everybody who had ever aroused their suspicions.
Public contempt, armpit odor of overalls, stool odor sample, cover name boycott. Contempt of national symbols, cover name immigrant. Refusal of body search, sample taken from the seat of his chair.
These jars labeled public contempt were taken by the People's Police Leipzig?
I can't tell you.
But you said before that you never took such samples.
I really can't say anything about it.
But you have 4 jars in a row here.
I can't answer you. The ministry took them over. They just put them here.
But the jars are labeled People's Police Leipzig, People's Police Leipzig, People's Police Leipzig.
I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know.
The basic rules for the perverse snoopery were laid down in a handbook written for the School of the Ministry for State Security. Among the top-secret study material, a whole chapter is dedicated to the foundations and applications for the identification of persons according to the specifics of odor, to be applied in cases of defacing of public buildings, spreading of defamatory leaflets, tearing down of flags, further in cases of trade in people directed against the state, and for the purpose of proving that a non-entitled person had entered certain rooms. Close cooperation between state organs was necessary. The most efficient institution for the deployment of tracking hounds was the special school of the Ministry of State Security in Preetsch. Here, the method of odor differentiation was honed to perfection in the course of 20 years. Originally designed to catch murderers, robbers, and rapists, the method proved invaluable for conspirative actions.
We take this sterile cloth and place it over the alleged place where the perpetrator had been standing during the course of his crime. The cloth is protected by aluminum foil against external contamination.
Nicht mehr auf diese Spur einwirken können. Dieses Tuch
It remains on the spot for approximately 30 minutes and is then returned to its original container. This enables us to preserve this odor for an unlimited time span.
Bis auf unbestimmte Zeit zu speichern.
The odor traces thus obtained were presented to the so-called differentiation hound in order to enable it to take up the scent. The dog will compare the sample with odor traces of suspects which have been obtained either openly or conspiratively. Cars and apartments of dissidents are broken into systematically in order to steal their body odor. Sometimes pretenses were used for the purpose of bringing the snooper cloth into direct contact with the victim. To provide an example, on his first visit, our reporter sat on a snooper cloth for 15 minutes. Afterwards, the sample was taken from the chair. The dog trainer hid it in cup number 8. The other cups are filled with different odor samples. Comrade Dog is motivated by affection. Then he is made familiar with the comparison sample. The East German Shepherd takes care of the rest. Already on the first round, she finds the right sample. If the cups are switched later, she will find it again. Examples from the practice of the Stasi Snooper Dog Squad Leipzig. Conspirative graffiti on a wall were investigated with the help of a snooper hound. A single graffiti and the murders in China yielded 8 odor samples. This handbill was also investigated and compared with preserved odor samples of dissidents. The criminal police always oblige, just like the People's Police Odor Differentiation Precinct in Treptow, East Berlin. All in all, several thousand dissidents throughout the GDR became victims of this literal snooping action. Now, only odor samples of police personnel remain with the criminal police.
In the back here, we have the storage rooms. In these shelves, you find all traces of affirmed crimes. Here in this box, we have the file cards of repeaters.
Among the crimes severe enough to merit the taking of odor samples, you also find antisocial behavior. Cooperation with state security was a matter of course.
There were efforts to cooperate, but to be correct, we got these things delivered.
From the Stasi?
Yes, from the Stasi. We did not know these people by name. The odor samples arrived here without names, identified by number only. They were processed and taken back immediately after the result had been obtained. We were not bothered by our conscience. We did our work. Personal involvement was not required. We had to remain objective. That is the most important point, isn't it?
Next, we'll witness how pollution is affecting a small East German town. Now we return to Global View's presentation of Eastern Europe breaking with the past.
While the wall shut off physical contact between East and West Germans, neither barbed wire nor concrete wall could prevent the East from watching the television programs of the West. Since the wall has come down, however, the roles have reversed. Today, many West Germans eagerly tune into East Germany to watch the unfolding dramas of a society struggling toward freedom. One of these shows, Klartext or Clear Text, is an East German equivalent of 60 Minutes, and it represents one of the first examples of investigative journalism to emerge in Eastern Europe. The following Klartext report examines pollution in the small town of Mölbis in the east of Germany. A few months before this was produced, a show with this kind of format and content was unthinkable. While you're watching it, bear in mind that from the time that television was first available, East Germans were never able to experiment with investigative TV journalism. And now, Klartext.
People say that whoever lives in our region loses 5 years of their lives, which can be proved by statistical data. Actually, this sign should be posted at the city limits. Mölbis, a half-hour drive from Leipzig. a village which has the dubious reputation of being the dirtiest in Europe. The sets for a post-war movie. On 310 out of 365 days, the wind carries tons of toxic gases, soot and dirt into the village, making people sick, killing nature, making metal and stone crumble. Day after day, the soft coal refining plant of Espenhain spews approximately 5 tons of highly toxic hydrogen sulfide into the air, an incredible amount. An amount which would be enough to kill 2 billion people, provided they inhale it directly. This would mean the end of the world.
It's a crime what they have done to us in those 40 years.
The phenol content alone is 15 times more than the highest admissible quantity. Phenols cause permanent liver and kidney damage. They were also used as defoliants during the Vietnam War. This unbelievable poisonous cocktail is collected in the rain barrel. The soft coal refining plant, which was built 50 years ago, is the heaviest environmental polluter in every respect. In the mid-70s, it was going to be shut down due to the switch to oil. But this change did not occur, and thus dirt and poison continue to be released. Since then, the plant has been operating, provided with a permanent exemption permit from the authorities. Production is in full gear, but people are dying. A landscape which is even worse than it looks. Mölbis is faced with a double threat, by the vapors and the surface mining crushing everything. Coal and gas have already wiped out many villages in the region. Only 340 of the originally 1,200 inhabitants are still here. 20 houses are empty. A village in agony. The village pond has an intense orange color. The older inhabitants remember having gone for a swim here.
No fish, no frogs, there's nothing in this pond. The water is completely dead. When the water level comes down from time to time, you can see at the rim a red strip of phenols, rust and other substances that are in this pond. Once we had white ducks, flying ducks. When they got out of the water, they were glaring red. The ducks don't go into the water anymore. I think they are afraid of it.
There is every reason to be afraid here. Bathing can be deadly, fresh air is harmful, fresh food makes people sick. In this region, everything is different. This is even reflected by the children's drawings. Children have to stay inside almost all day. Already this environment left its mark on many children. Eczema, bronchitis, croup, pneumonia. Doctors diagnose these diseases again and again. The number of skin diseases alone has increased by 300% over the last 10 years, exact proof of which is furnished by statistics. Doctors do everything within their power to get children to leave. At least once a year they should have the opportunity to breathe fresh air. But when the dirt keeps coming, it is everywhere, in the soil, in the grass, in the air. Wherever children are, contamination is around, and a child does not always want to play at a table covered by a white tablecloth. It wants to play in the sand or in the grass and frolic in the woods. It is very difficult to contain children, even when they are really sick. Our lakes and rivers are also polluted, so where can our children play around here? Doctors fear that the immune system will be permanently damaged. The incidence of cancer with adults is on the increase. Espenhain is infamous for its record number of cardiovascular diseases. Are there many children who get medication on a permanent basis? Yes, I know that there are a lot of them, but I can't give the exact percentage of those who receive dispensary treatment and those who are already under permanent medication. This is said to be quite dangerous. What life will that be when they have to start taking medication at 7 or 8 years? They too want to grow up, breathe freely, and they don't want to carry a spray bottle with them all of the time.
Und sie möchten ja mal frei atmen können und nicht immer die Sprayflasche dabei haben.
Well aware of all these dangers, Dr. Koschny sounded the alarm a long time before the upheavals in November. Nobody was interested in it, except, of course, the Stasi, the secret police, which showed some interest for Koschny's activities. It might have been a warning or a threat when they asked her if she had heard of certain internment camps. In the plant, on the other hand, there were no reactions. There were inspectors checking safety in the workplace, and when we asked them, they said that everything was fine and that the quantities did not exceed the limits. Or they reminded us that we lived in an industrialized region and not in a health resort, and that we had to pay our toll. But I thought that was not okay. I knew that there were certain standards, so we came to the conclusion that the inspectors lied to us, knowingly, which was confirmed afterwards. Again and again, the inhabitants, with their defiant perseverance, wrest a harvest from the contaminated soil. Do you eat the strawberries with your family?
Yes, we eat everything. But I have met some people from elsewhere who told us that everything tasted like gas, like poisonous sulfur gas.
This is true. You can smell, taste, and feel Mölbis on your skin, in your eyes, nose, and mouth. The nearer you come to the village, the stronger the tickle in your throat. Never before have we returned so dirty and bad-smelling from shooting. Nevertheless, everything is harvested. Aren't you afraid of eating this stuff? We have always eaten it. We didn't know what was in the soil. If we had known it, maybe we would have stopped eating it. But then this would not have been easy. The vegetable truck came to the store at 9 a.m. and at 9:30 everything was gone. This is what it was like in our village. Self-supply was the rule, and the villagers abided by it. They had the choice between polluting the environment and having nothing. Surprisingly enough, Mr. Stove, the then president, was a fan of organic farming. Gerda Kirchheis wrote to him and many others, letter after letter, year after year, since 1983. The last one particularly drastic. We are killed in gas chambers, like in Auschwitz, only more slowly, she wrote. This comparison is certainly wrong, but it makes one thing clear: desperation and helplessness on the part of those concerned, whose cries for help nobody hears and nobody wants to hear. The replies to those letters were frighteningly cold. This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter. It was passed on to the proper authority, with socialist greetings. When finally a talk was arranged, the result was crushing. He had the nerve to tell me that we shouldn't plant those trees that do not tolerate the gas. He said we should get in touch with the institute in Dresden growing the trees and make them grow trees that tolerate the gas. Then I told him about the garden and about the plants in it. I told him that the turnips were full of holes and the carrots silver. Those are the effects of the gas. He told me that I was not supposed to grow those plants that do not tolerate the gas.
Das habe ich dem gesagt und hat zu mir gesagt, schau, was das Gas nicht verträgt, das dürfen Sie eben nicht anbauen.
Foul smells and dirt have been with these people for decades. But this is nothing compared to what is quite frankly called gas attack around here.
Plants may flourish on some days or during some weeks, and then suddenly there's gas damage. This happens when gas is blown off by the factory unchecked. This might be caused by an accident or something, we don't know exactly. All of a sudden, all the vegetation is destroyed within a radius of thousands of feet. Plants lie flat on the ground and look like dry threads, like hay.
Are the people compensated for the gas damage?
As soon as the gas damage has been reported. I experienced this myself 5 weeks after I got here. All the leaves suddenly fell off the trees. After 2 days, the once green leaves withered and were really dry. Then a measurer from the committee came and measured the damage. There's a saying around here, the one who reports the loudest gets most of the money, a sort of hush money. Some foreigner asked me if we got compensated for our damaged lungs. I couldn't give him an answer.
It looks like a waterfall, and it is one. A waterfall of dirt, heavy metals and chemicals. Of all those substances used in the process of soft coal refinement. The incredibly bad-smelling brown stream constantly flows into the little river Dölse, then into the Pleiße, later on into the Elbe. You are amazed at actually seeing something that is not dead. If there were a thing like smell TV, you would have turned off at this point at the latest. Day after day, month after month, year after year, this poisonous river keeps flowing. Only a few feet away from here, grain is harvested. The growing crops are already affected. Has it ever been examined what is in this grain, what gets into the bread and who eats it? The water flowing into the Gösel is already purified, as amazing as this might seem. This is done by a $70 million biological purification plant, which treats the waste of the coal refining plant. Phenols have been filtered out by 99%. The remaining toxic substances are not removed. Together with other wastes, this dirt load becomes this brown, foul-smelling flow. But this is not all. The wastes of the pressed coal plant are collected in this pool. Water evaporates and coal sinks to the ground. On hot and stormy days, this is a source of danger.
This happened 8 weeks ago. A thunderstorm was brewing, and all of a sudden it was so dark that at 1:30 p.m. we couldn't see anything in our apartment. In front of the window, a black wall of fine coal built up, which limited the visibility to about 10 feet. The whole thing lasted for 4 or 5 minutes. After that, the whole region was covered by the same black layer.
Probably this year, carbonization plants will be closed down. What is likely to remain are the power plants that will continue to pollute the environment with about 450,000 tons of hydrogen sulfide per year. Mölbis continues to be faced with an impending threat. Why do you still live here?
Where should we go? They have been promising us for 3 years we could move away, but nothing has been done. They promised us homes. Every owner of a house was supposed to get a home elsewhere, but they haven't kept their promises. The great change has not changed that much, after all.
Even with the overwhelming seriousness of the changes in Germany today, the lighter side peeks out on occasion. We thought you might enjoy a short report on an East German lingerie company. They're redesigning their collection to develop new markets and compete with the West. The young East German model, like many East Germans today, is not entirely comfortable with trying on the ways of the West.
For decades, Rosa Luxemburg's bust has inspired the brigade of the central planned production of socialist brassieres. Nowadays, this communist heroine must go. The state-owned company Sanitas Corset Factory was transformed into Sanitas Company on the rise. The order books are still bursting at the seams. Soviet sisters in particular continue to rely on corsets from Saxony. Pretty functional item, especially popular with the Soviet Union. They bought very functional designs. The designs emphasized their functionality, I would say. Very functional, although sometimes there were pretty nice items, but basically everything was just functional and kind of old-fashioned. The crude underwear made for Russian women is blocking the output for the new German chic. The production of conservative bodices does not cover the costs anymore.
What we have here basically are barter deals. They supply us with oil and we give them brassieres. This is calculated and I don't really care how I get my money. Right now there are no signs that I won't get any money.
Away from the ruble, moving towards the Deutschmark. With the peach skin line, the Saxons want to reach Western levels. Suggestive lingerie for the pan-German woman. Corset makers show their flexibility. Once again, elastic material, elastic lace interwoven with girdles that are also made of elastic and soft materials. As it stresses the shape, it's not only for very young customers, but also for middle-aged ladies. Saxon lace has been worn by West German women for quite some time. Mail order catalogs offer them at clearance prices. Our women did not know that socialism gave them daily support. Corsets from Zwickau continue to be subsidized.
Right now, money is flowing. I get back at least part of my expenses. Sometimes the decision has to be made if there are going to be subsidies or not. If there are none, the first step I'll have to take is to cancel the contracts.
The first ones to suffer would be Soviet women. But efforts are being made to induce changes in the field of fashion as well. In the competitive brassiere business, the Saxonian innovators don't want to lag behind. A brassiere combined with a shirt and a pair of panties made of lace and satin. As I have said, this is the two-color combination, the colors of lavender and black. We have the same in a one-color design, black with black. That's what the future looks like, sheer Sanitas. But the months ahead are going to be a test period for the lingerie business from Zwickau. Without financial support, the peach skin will wrinkle.
Next, in our special section at the kiosk, our guest storyteller reads the incredible words of Kurt Tucholsky, a man who imagined the existence of a wall dividing Germany in 1926.
We'll be right back with At the Kiosk and the dramatic vision of a German philosopher. And now our special feature, At the Kiosk.
Mountains, valleys, lakes, the trees rustle, the springs gush, the leaves bend in the wind. Diagonally across a forest clearing throughout the forest, over the highway, runs barbed wire, the border. On either side, men are standing. The men on one side wear blue uniforms with yellow buttons. And those on the other wear red uniforms with black buttons. There they stand with their guns, some smoking, all with serious faces. Yes, sir, that's the border. This is where the states meet, and each state very carefully sees that the inhabitants of the other do not pass over the boundary line. And this thing they call Europe has become a multicolored patchwork. And man is a foreigner if he so much as sticks his nose out of his village. There are more foreigners than natives on this divinely blessed continent. But there is one earth on which we, foolish mortals, live. One ground under our feet. One sky above us. Borders run crisscross through Europe, but nothing. Neither borders nor soldiers can separate men in the long run if they do not want to be kept apart. Wouldn't we today split our sides laughing at someone who would urge us with gushing pathos to break down the barriers between Berlin and Magdeburg? In just the same way, people are someday going to laugh at an international pacifist, 1920 vintage, when the time has come. Let us all dedicate ourselves to making that time come sooner. This is Dan Nutsu at the kiosk.
What visions for a man who lived more than half a century ago? Who else in 1926 could have even dreamt of a wall dividing Germany? Or for that matter, a cooperative Europe working toward establishing a unified European continent in 1992. I'm your host, Robert Siegel. Thank you for joining us today for Global View's presentation of Eastern Europe, breaking with the past. As they say in Berlin, Auf Wiedersehen.
Eastern Europe, Breaking with the Past, has been a presentation of Global View that brings you entertaining and informative television programs from around the world. If you'd like to find out more information about Global View or purchase a video cassette of this program or any other programs from the series, please contact Global View, Post Office Box 11617, Cleveland Park Station, Washington,